Let's replace the water pump on this 2020 Chevy Silverado. These repair cover a lot of GM vehicles, the Yukon, the Sierra, the Tahoe, and Suburban with the 5.3 or 6.2. So let's remove the battery negative cable. It is a 10mm bolt. Loosen that up and take the fuse box cover off. And now we're going to remove our air intake boot. Loosen those two 7mm bolts. You can pull the boot off the intake. And let's remove the PCV hose in the back of the intake. You push the white tab in and you pull it out. And let's remove this wiring harness attached to the alternator and the air intake tube. Use a cat claw like this or a trim tool to remove the wiring harness off of it. There's two of them. And we're going to remove the 10mm that bolted to the alternator body. It's holding the air intake box. We need to remove that bolt. There it is. Good. And the intake is ready to come out. As you guys see here, that's the mark of the water pump spraying coolant for a long time around the intake tube. And we're going to remove this coolant pipe here. Let's detach it from the coolant fin shroud and put it on the side. Good. And we're going to remove our belt. It's one-time use, just cutting it out and get a new one. You can use any cutting tool to remove it. It's trash. We're going to put the vehicle up in the air so you can get access to the bolt on the other body and the wheel liner on the passenger side. We're going to remove those T15. It's about 8 of them in one push pin. Let's remove them and pull the headliner halfway over the control arm so you can have access to the lower radiator hose and the cooler lines. There you go. Just halfway. So we're going to remove the lower radiator hose so we can drain it faster. By the way, only do this on the cool engine. You can use the petcock. It take a long time to drain it, or you can remove the lower radiator hose. Either way, you have to remove it because so you can remove the fin shroud. Have a container ready. It's gonna be a lot of coolant. There you go. Now let's remove the underbody shield. It is held by 4 30mm bolt. It might be different for the Tahoe and the Suburban, but on the Sierra and Silverado is the same. Now let's remove the engine oil cooler line push pin off the fin shroud. We're gonna remove anything that attached to the fin shroud on the bottom of the vehicle. Any line that's attached to it. Now we put the vehicle back down. And we're going to remove our fuse box here. And let's loosen those 4 7mm bolts. Those bolts hold the connector to the fuse box. And now let's remove this 30mm power positive cable that's attached to the fuse box and put it on the side. You're gonna use a pick to disengage those tabs here and pull on the fuse box at the same time. There is 4 of them, 2 on each side. You disengage it, and you're gonna go on the other side, do the same thing, disengage those. You're gonna have to wiggle the fuse box a little bit because it can be very hard to remove, but it will come out. There you go. Now remember where to put those connectors. They only go in one way, and by the way, the fuse box is labeled the color of the connectors. You'll see it. There is 2 10mm that hold the bottom of the fuse box. Remove it, and there is 1 tab that's holding the bottom of the fuse box. Using a pick like this, you're going to disengage it and pull it up. There you go. And take those connectors off, put them on the side. Good. Now we're going to remove our engine oil cooler line. There are a C-clip that's holding them in place. Remove the C-clip. You're gonna use a pick like this and take the C-clip out. There you go. There is a 10mm bolt that holds the engine oil cooler line to the radiator. Removing it too. Now our engine cooler line ready to come out. Let's unplug. Let's remove this push pin that's attached to the fan shroud. And we'll be doing the same thing for the return line, oil cooler line. You take the C-clip off. And pull the engine cooler line out of the radiator. You have to wiggle it out and it will come out eventually. There you go. Now we're going to remove our transmission cooler line, detach it from the fan shroud and put it on the side. Now let's remove the upper radiator hose push pin from the fan shroud. We are on the driver's side of the vehicle now. Let's remove this wiring harness that's plugged in into the fan shroud. Now we're going to remove the small radiator hose that's attached to the reservoir. We're gonna use this tool here so we can remove the upper radiator hose. It's very useful. I'll post the link in the comment section below for it. It's a very good tool to have doing those jobs. You guys see here, I'm doing the same thing for the small radiator hose. That one's attached to the reservoir too. You guys see the stain from the coolant over the water pump. Let's remove the radiator hose out of the water pump assembly. Let's unplug our coolant temperature sensor. Now let's unplug the fan shroud. There are two fans. You have to unplug it. It's a weird way to unplug it. I can't really show you guys, but you have to pull the gray tab out and squeeze it so you can remove it. There is a connector. That gray tab, you need to pull it out and you squeeze the bottom of it so you can disengage it off the fan assembly. There's two connectors. You'll do the same thing on the other side. And by the way, those connectors have push pin attached to the fan shroud. Make sure you remove them. You can use a flat blade screwdriver. It helps to unplug it. There is a 10mm bolt that attached the transmission cooler line to the radiator. You need to remove it. It's on the driver's side too, near the intake box. And there are two 10mm that bolt the fan shroud to the radiator. And our fan shroud ready to come out. Here you go. Now let's just pull the fan shroud out. Make sure it's clear off of both sides because you might be tangled into wiring harness or some cooler lines. Pay attention to those things. And here is all the working room we have now. There you go. Keep in mind, guys, this water pump is built in with the thermostat and other things in the temperature sensor. Now let's unplug our alternator. There is a 70mm bolt and have a plastic cap on it. You need to unplug it. Let's unplug our throttle body. Let's remove this wiring harness on top of the air intake and get it out of the way. There you go. And let's unplug our alternator. You see, you pull this red tab up and disengage the connector so you can remove it off the alternator. Use a flap disc screwdriver like this. There you go. There you go. Now let's remove those two bolts that hold the alternator to the bracket. It is a 15 millimeter. There is a long one and a short one. Make sure you keep that in mind when you put it back on. It's a very tight bolt, by the way. It's threaded all the way to the engine block. Now we're gonna use a flap disc screwdriver like this to pry the alternator off the water pump bracket. You're gonna have to wiggle it out until it comes out. There you go. And put it on the side. Now we're gonna remove our heater core hose that's attached to the water pump assembly. They are different size, by the way. You really can't mess that up. Remove the compressor spring and remove the heater hose off of it. It's one small one, one big hose. Now we're gonna remove the lower radiator hose off the water pump assembly. Compressor spring and remove it. There you go. Then that's your thermostat assembly, by the way, if you have to replace it. Now let's cut the AC compressor belt. It's a one-time use belt. Just cut it. Now let's remove our tensioner bracket, tensioner pulley bracket. There it is. It's not really tension, it's just idler pulley. Now let's remove our water pump bolt. It's about 8 30 millimeter bolt. And just remove them. And there is a bolt that holds to the AC compressor and the stud at the bottom. Make sure you remove those. We're gonna use a 5 millimeter socket to remove the stud that threaded the AC compressor to the water pump and through the block. Remove that one as well. There you go. It's the final bolt that holds that thing together. There it is. Now let's remove our water pump assembly. It's pretty heavy, by the way. There are two gaskets in the back. Make sure you take them out. You'll see them on the engine block. There is one, the other one's missing. It fell off. Good. And make sure when you take the AC compressor out, have a hammer and a chisel and push that little bolt. It's not a bolt, it's just a threaded not stud, but something that's inside the AC compressor that you can bolt it to the engine block. Make sure you push it out using a hammer and a chisel. Okay, here is our new water pump. Let's put the bolt in. Good. Here is the AC compressor bolt. It is a 30 millimeter bolt, and there is the stud put at the bottom. It's the reverse of removal, guys. Pretty easy. Good. Now let's put our lower radiator hose. Pay attention to the orientation. There is one side say engine and radiator, so pay attention to it. Put our tensioner bracket on. 15 millimeter. Now I'm gonna put the AC compressor belt on. I have a separate video on how to put those belt on those vehicles. If you want a detailed video on how to do it, I'll post a link in the comment section below. You use a 24mm and a long 1/2" ratchet, and follow the instruction and turn the engine clockwise until the belt is fully wrapped around the crankshaft pulley and the AC compressor pulley, and that's it. We're gonna do the same thing for the main belt too. Gonna use some zip ties like this. There is a special tool for it, but you can use zip tie like this. Zip tie the belt to the crankshaft pulley and turn it clockwise until it's fully seated. Now let's put our cyclic back on for the oil cooler line. Make sure you put them back on. If you lose them, buy extra, because if you start the vehicle, you don't put them back on, high pressure oil will shoot out the radiator and the hose will come out. Now our fin shroud assembly is ready to go back on. It's back on, and let's put the bolt in. It's a 210mm bolt, and let's plug our fin assembly. Put the connector in and push the push pin in the fin assembly. Do the same thing on the other side. Put our transmission cooler back on. Plug our engine oil cooler lines. Good. Do the same thing at the bottom. Put the cover on. Now let's put our lower radiator hose on. We are on the passenger side of the vehicle, by the way. Let's put everything back on. Good. Now let's put our engine cooler line push pin in the fin shroud assembly. Plug everything back in, pretty much. Everything that was attached to the lower part of the fin shroud, put them back on. That's what it is, pretty much. Good. Perfect. Everything is back on now, guys. Now we're ready to put the lower part of the fuse box assembly. It was what I'm telling you. As you guys see, it's labeled the color of the connectors, where they belong. Just follow it, and you put it, you will be fine. And put the 210mm bolt back on. Now we're getting ready to put the upper part of the fuse box. There it is. You're gonna hear a click when it's fully seated, and you're going to tie the 7mm bolt so they can pull the connector and secure it in place. There it is. You'll see a green thing come up. There you go. That means it's fully seated in the fuse box assembly. Good. Now we're going to put the positive cable on the fuse box. It is a 30mm bolt. 30mm nut. Good. Let's put the fuse box back on. And put our air intake back on. And put our 10mm bolt, put it back on. I'm gonna show you guys, it's a short video on how to bleed the cooling system, but if you guys want a detailed video on how to bleed the cooling system on GM vehicles, I'll post the link in the comment section below as well. But basically, you just fill up the cooling system. I'm using this funnel here that's pretty much there for bleeding cooling system. As you guys see, you see the air come out. It's bubbling. So what this does is fill up the cooling system, let it run for about 30 minutes or so, let it get to temperature with the heat on, and don't let this go empty, by the way. And you see me starting the vehicle, you're gonna see the coolant level drop as the temperature is getting hotter. But keep an eye on it in your temperature gauge as well. You see I'm putting on full heat, and put the fan on high, and pay attention to your coolant gauge. You see the coolant levels bubbling. That's the air that's coming out of it. Keep a good eye on the coolant level. It's still bubbling. You're not done yet. You have to let it run for about 30 minutes or more, if anything. It might, since you have a new thermostat in there, it might take some time for the thermostat to open. And you let it run. Make sure it's blended. Take it for a test drive. Pay attention to your coolant temperature and your coolant level. If it's slow, top it off and put the cap back on. And that's about it. It's a straightforward thing. It's really not that complicated. As you guys see, it drop, and I'm gonna add a little bit more so you can get to the right level. Yep, still dropping. Everything's getting hot now. Temperature is good. 210 degrees. And we're getting heat in the cabin. That's the telltale sign that it's bled too. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.